And looking then at page let me ask you before I get to the specific pages, did you do specific work and make specific contributions to the package insert for propofol?
Absolutely. Actually, if you scroll down, you can get to it.
What is this here, Dr. Shafer?
So this is a graph that I made on my computer in 1992, and that's the only source of this. This was done in combination with in conjunction with Dan Spiker at the Food and Drug Administration, and it relates to the use of propofol infusions in the intensive care unit. I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong date. This went in with the ICU sedation, not the max sedation, and that was 1996, I think. So this is for ICU sedation, not max sedation. But the question that came up is, how long can a patient get propofol in the intensive care unit and still wake up quickly? And it depends on how much drug is given. If you give propofol for 1 hour, you get the lower curve that you can see there. If you give propofol for 10 hours, you have a slower washout. If you give propofol for 10 days, you have yet a slower washout. Although the point that was made by this graph is that as long as you're giving the propofol appropriately, even after 10 days of administration, take a look at the lower axis, it's called minutes. Minutes after the end of the infusion, even after 10 days of administration, the drug will go away in a few minutes after you turn off the infusion. That's the nature of propofol. And this was to guide clinicians. It was also intended as a warning to clinicians to not overdose. If you take that little graph there, the very last line that kind of parallels the word awakening, that curve that comes down right below and parallels the word awakening.
Dr. Shafer, do you have a laser pointer?
I didn't bring one with me now. Oh, there's here. I'm sorry, yes. Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. This curve right here, the notion was you go from a level of 1 during your sedation, pretty good level, reasonable level for sedation, down to about 0.5 and you wake up. As long as that's what you're doing, you can wake up in here. Look at this. This is just about 25, 30 minutes. So you'll wake up quickly. But look how flat this curve is. If you're off a little bit and you're giving too much drug, it can actually extend to hours. So you have to titrate carefully. If you titrate precisely, you wake up here, just a few minutes. But if you miss it, this curve is so flat that it doesn't cross until somewhere around here that you actually wake up. So you have to, even with long infusions, titrate very carefully.
And this graph that we're looking at that is contained within the propofol package, is that an example of the modeling type work that you're involved with?
Absolutely. I did this graph. This is all based upon mathematical models that are anchored in research data. So the models are anchored in research data. But those models allowed me to do this calculation to provide dosing guidelines, which 15 years later are still in use.
Thank you. I have the same document, but just in a larger font. May this be marked People's 212, Your Honor?
It is.
Dr. Shafer, do you recognize People's 212?
Yes, I think I do.
Okay. And this is actually the text of the package insert that we're looking here.
Correct.
People's 211?
Correct.
So in addition to this modeling chart that you created, what was that, about 20 years ago?
I think it was 1996, so about 15 years ago.
Going to, let's see, page 9 of People's 212. Also, the text from the current propofol package insert. Can you describe what's shown here and explain to us your contribution to what is shown here?
So this was the work that was in 1991. So this is the work that's 20 years. If you look at initiation of max sedation, you can read through here. Let me just highlight with the laser pointer. It says here that with the infusion method, there's a certain number of mics per kilo per minute. I'm sorry. And this is the way of starting the infusion, which actually is to be done just for 3 to 5 minutes. That infusion is directly from the modeling that I did, and one of the talks that I gave for many years after this was how modeling and simulation were the basis of these numbers. The 0.5 milligram per kilogram, another way of expressing this, given over 3 to 5 minutes. I will say that my modeling actually said 3 minutes. The FDA, to be conservative, changed it from 3 to 5. But the modeling result that I gave to the AstraZeneca for this was 3 minutes. Here you can see the reduction in the elderly. In the elderly, debilitated, or this term here means ill, patients. And they say here the rate of administration should be over 3 to 5 minutes, and it should be 80%. Now that's kind of a bold statement, because for midazolam, it's thought to be half. An elderly patient needs half the dose. But the modeling that I did said for propofol, the reduction in the elderly was just a 20% reduction. They get 80% of the dose of a younger person. There was some pushback and discussion about this because that was considered to be, gee, the elderly, you can really tolerate that much? But it has stood the test of time. 20 years ago this was put forward, and it has not been criticized. That 80% reduction has stood the test of time. So all of those numbers are directly from modeling and simulation that I did for AstraZeneca in collaboration. It was really a three-way collaboration with the FDA.
And these numbers came from your computer modeling and your simulations of drug dosaging, again, back 20, 15 years ago.
Absolutely correct. But again, I emphasize anchored in data, anchored in experimental data. Now, same thing here for maintenance of max sedation. Here, all this talk, we're only talking about 3 minutes of drug delivery. For maintenance of max sedation.
Can I ask you if you could just explain briefly what is max sedation?
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. I should have explained that. Max sedation means monitored anesthesia care. The care that you expect when an anesthesiologist is in attendance and controlling the dose and titrating the dose to produce the right drug effect and monitoring for any signs of toxicity.
What does titrating the dose mean?
Titrating means increasing or decreasing depending on what you see. If you don't have enough drug effect, then you will increase the dose. If you see too much drug effect or you see toxicity, then you'll decrease the dose. So that's what titration is. Titration is increasing or decreasing the dose in response to the observations that you make as you give the infusion.
In addition, Dr. Shafer, to your contributions specifically to the propofol dosaging and the package insert in your modeling and simulations in that regard, since that time, 15, 20 years ago, have you continued to have regular involvement with the FDA as well as make regular contributions to this area of this science?
Yes. I've been a special government employee of the Food and Drug Administration for a number of years, although I didn't get my current package back to them, so I'm not sure if it's currently in force. It might or might not be. But I've worked with the FDA for about 20 years, have numerous colleagues and regular dialogue with people at the FDA. From 2002 to 2006, I was a member of the Anesthesia and Life Support Drug Advisory Committee. That is a committee of scientists and clinicians external to the Food and Drug Administration that the FDA will go to for guidance about new drugs or about old drugs that have problems. So I was a member of that committee from 2002 to 2006, and from 2004 to 2006, I served as the chair of the advisory, is it called advisory committee or advisory panel? One or the other, but I think it's called advisory committee, and I served as the chair of the advisory committee from 2004 to 2006.